So the other day, I crashed my GEPRC CineLog 25 drone. And as you can see here, the plate that kind of holds the GoPro detached from the main frame, and the FPV camera is also attached to that plate, along with these kind of shock-absorbing dampeners that are made of rubber. Really nothing broke here, but I will need to get them to go back through these small carbon fiber holes, and that's a little bit harder than it sounds. So what we're going to do here is show the process that I went through to try to get these things to feed back through those tiny holes, and the best way that I know of doing that. So here are the tools here. So I have a plastic spudger, which is just kind of a poking / prying tool, very basic, and a little bit of string, as you're going to see here. So a tiny bit of thread, probably about 8 inches would do. And what you're essentially going to do is loop it around the rubber dampeners, just like that. And you're going to feed that other end up through the carbon fiber, through the the pre-cut holes, to try to force that lip of the rubber dampener up through. So first we're going to get some things out of the way. Going to move the Velcro and just kind of clear up the space to give as much room to work as possible. And then you can see how everything kind of lines up. So the next thing we're going to do here is get rid of the action camera. So I'm going to take that Hero 10 black bones off, just to make it a little bit easier to work with the rubber dampeners and that string and everything that we're about to do. Go ahead and keep this screw on the GoPro so I don't lose it. Now we have everything free. We should be able to get a much better look at where everything is going to be situated and get a total look at all of the different rubber dampeners that need to go up through those holes. And in this case, it was a full detach, so there are quite a few. So starting with the first one here, you're just going to thread the loop, or just kind of wrap the loop of the thread around that little indentation on that rubber dampener and feed the other end up through. And hopefully that, this isn't, you're not going to get it perfect every single time. As you'll see, I will struggle with this a little bit. And even if you get it a little bit, just like that, it should be enough for you to poke it the rest of the way through, which is why I'm using that spudger tool here to kind of just get in there and shove the remaining part of that rubber up through. And that one's done. Just have a bunch more to do here, including the ones underneath. So you have to remember to do both the top and the bottom. This particular drone has quite a few of these things. Depending on your quad, it may have a different layout or fewer or even perhaps more of those rubber dampeners. So let's try the second one here, feeding it up through the hole. It's already wrapped around the rubber. I believe this one's going to give a little bit more trouble. Let's see how this goes. And go ahead and pulling. And again, partial, didn't fully go through. You get pretty lucky if you do that. But poking just to make sure you get all of that rubber up and around and fully pushed through. That one's good to go now. I believe we have one left on the top side here. It is a good idea to do all of the top before you start going to the bottom. Let's see how this one goes. So looping that string around the rubber. Again, feeding up through that carbon fiber hole. Give it a tug. That was a good one. So that one doesn't need any extra work. That was fully, 100% seated correctly with one tug there, no extra tools or time required. So that's what you hope for. It just doesn't happen all the time. Now we're going to move on to the bottom. As you can see here, for every top one, there is a bottom one. You're going to want to make sure that you get all of these things, because if they're not fully seated, you're going to get some extra vibration on your action camera, or in this case, both your DVR camera and the action camera, because the plate for the CineLog actually houses or holds both cameras, and it would just kind of give you extra jello and some unwanted movement on your cameras, which can ruin your footage. So for the bottom rubber, I would recommend, since it's probably going to be harder for you to, see it, you're better off just using gravity as your friend here and pushing down through to poke it through with the plastic spudger, rather than trying to loop it and swoop it there with the string. You may have to move the props out of the way, or possibly even remove the props if you're trying to get a better, vantage point or access to the rubber coming through the bottom of that frame. In this case, I can see that wants the whole way through. Fortunately, I didn't have to remove any props for this fix, but you may have to, depending on which ones you have to, reseat, or how your drone's specific layout is. All right, so let's see what's happening next here. I got all of them fully seated, getting the GoPro reattached, and just double checking that I have everything attached. Everything looks like it is fully seated, top and bottom. This thing should be ready to fly. So the next step here is to take it out for a test flight and just make sure that it flies well.